Good evening, and today I'll be explaining my Java 1 final project. So, for my Java final project, I was asked to build three classes: a retail item class, a cash register class, and a sales receipt class. So, the retail item class asked me to write a class named retail item that holds data about an item and its retail store. The class should have the following data fields: the description, the units on hand, the price. I should also write a constructor that accepts arguments for each field, appropriate mutator methods, and store values in these fields, and accessor methods that return the values in these fields. Once you have written the class, write a separate program that creates three retail objects and stores the following data. Okay. Then we have the cash register class that asks me to write a cash register class that can be used with the retail item class that I wrote this retail item class, and it should simulate a sale of a retail item. It should have a constructor that accepts a retail object as an argument, and the constructor should also accept an integer that represents the quantity of items being purchased. In addition, the class should have the following methods: a get subtotal, a get tax, and a get total. Then finally, a sales receipt class that basically just prints out the everything for the sale, including the unit price, the quantity, subtotal, and sales tax. Okay, so the first class we're going to go through is the retail item class. So right here I have all my data fields. I have the description as a string, the units on hand for the quantity of the item as an integer, and the price as a double, and they're all private because they're data fields. Then I have the constructor right here that takes three parameters: one of a string data type called description, an int and a double, the int called units on hand, to represent the quantity or the amount of how much of this item do we have, and the price of the item for each item. So this constructor basically just assigns the parameter values to the data fields. So whatever value is in this, whatever value is passed to this as an argument when we create an object, will be assigned to the description, the same for the units on hand, and the same for the price. Then first set of methods we have is our mutator functions. Our mutator functions basically just assigns a value to the description. Well, this mutator function called setDescription takes a string parameter and it assigns the value to the description, data field description, and we have a 1 to set the units on hand and another to set the price. That's if the user wishes to change the price of a certain item after they call the constructor. Then we have accessor methods that return the values in each of the data fields. So we have the first method being getDescription, returns the value in description, which will be a string. The same thing for get units on hand, and the same thing for get price. Now, for this class, I was asked to build a separate program and build three objects of this class. And we can move on to the next file, J1FB. And right here, first thing I'm doing is I'm creating three objects with different names. One called item 1, item 2, and item 3. And they all have different arguments. So the first argument, as we can look back at our class, will be a description to describe the item, then the quantity or the units on hand, and then the price of that item. So for item 1, we have a jacket. We have 12 jackets, and the price for a jacket is $59.95. For item 2, we have designer jeans. We have 40 units on hand, and the price is $34.95. And the same thing for item 3. Now, I just did some printout statements to prove that my prove that the object was created and the data was packed successfully. So I can run this function to demonstrate this, and they will have a print out each. It prints out everything. It uses the accessing methods on each item, and it prints out the description, which is the jacket for item 1, then the units, and then the price. Now this should be an integer, but because I'm using the printf method right here, I changed the data type with a double. Now we can move on to our cash register class, and this class is basically just simulating a purchase of an item. So the requirement for this class was to create a constructor that takes a retail item as a object and the quantity. So right here, before we move to our constructor, let's talk about our data fields. So the first one is the quantity, to represent how much of this item do the person want to purchase, and then a retail item to represent which item is it, like the data fields of the item, so the price, the description, and how much units they are. Then we can move on to our constructor. When the user creates an object and passes the appropriate arguments, an item, object, and the quantity, the item will be assigned to the data field item, and the quantity, the value in the quantity parameter will be assigned to the private quantity of the class. Then we have our methods, and these methods are calculating the subtotal, the tax, and the get total. So to calculate the subtotal, we need to get the price of the item and multiply it by how many items the user wants to purchase. So that's all this method does. It just returns the item price times the quantity. Then the tax, the get tax method, it's using 6%, so that's 0.06 to represent the tax, and then it times it by the value returned from get subtotal method, and that will return the sales tax for that that purchase. And then the get total just adds the subtotal and the get tax and returns that value. And I use that object in this program right here. So first I just create a retail item object called item 1. Then I'm using the scanner object so I can accept inputs. Prompt the user to enter the quantity, because we need the quantity to pass to the cash register object. And then since this object is already created, I can access any of these functions. So I can get the get subtotal, get tax, or get total, or the get total. Excuse me. So this is what I'm doing right here. I'm printing out the subtotal, the get tax, and the ultimate total. Now we can move on to the final class, the sales receipt. And what this class does is just use the retail item also, and then it takes the quantity and it writes to a file. And I'm gonna show you that in a minute, but let's go through the data fields first, or the import statements at the top. So the first statement is the java.io file writer, and this is used to create a file and write to that file. And then we have the java.io exception. This is used to catch errors. And I'm using this import right here to format the text that I'm adding to this string right here that we're going to talk about right now. So we have 4 data fields: the quantity, the retail item, and a cash register. So we can access all of these methods, because without this class we cannot get the get, so we cannot get a value for the subtotal, the get text, or the get total. So we need that one of those objects. So in the constructor of the sales receipt, we're adding the parameter values of item and quantity, and we're assigning them to quantity and item. Then we're creating a cash register object, and we're passing item and quantity as arguments. Then we're adding this text sales receipt to the file contents string, because we're going to use this to write the file. Then we have our get quantity accessor method that just returns the quantity, and we have a write receipt method, and this method just adds strings, so for the unit price, and then access the item price, and it just prints that out. We're using the decimal format, and we're using this format to format the doubles that this method would return. Then we're printing out the quantity with this method right here, the get quantity method. Then we're doing the same for the subtotal, same for the sales tax, and then the total. And now right here we're using a try and catch block to write the file and catch any errors. So in the try catch block, we're trying to create an object, and this will create a file called sales receipt. Then the writer that write method on the writer object takes a string. This is why we was all of these strings is now in file context, so it writes all of whatever is in file context to the sales receipt file. Then after this is completed successfully, we just print out successfully wrote to the file, and we're adding sales receipt to let the user know that the file was successfully created. Then we have our catch block that throws an error if the file threw an error. So we print out this message right here. Now let's show you how I'm using that in this program right here. So now we know our sales item class needs a retail item object, so we're creating that right here, passing the jacket as description, 12 units, and the price. Then we're using the scanner object to create a way for the user to input into the program. Then we're prompting the user to enter the quantity of the item, store the user's input into quantity. Then we're creating a sales receipt object called receipt, and we're passing the item that we created up here and the quantity. Then all we have to do is call the write receipt method on the sales receipt class, and that will create this file right here. And then my last program is where I used all of these classes in one program. So the first thing I'm doing, I imported the scanner object so the user can input the quantity and their choice, because the user will be able to choose between the three items. The three items that I created were three objects of the retail item class. So the first one is the jacket, designer jeans, shirt, and we have different quantities and different prices. Then I'm calling the display menu method that I created down here, and all this is doing is just displaying the menu. So it's displaying all each object's description, units, and their price. Then we're creating a variable called choice, And then we have a do while because we have a do while loop, and in this do while loop we're asking you to choose one of the three items. Then we have a switch case that takes a choice whether 1, 2, or 3. If it's not 1, 2, or 3, then it will print out this, and this is why we have it in a loop. So the user will choose 1, 2, or 3 because that's the only items we have. And then we're calling. If the user has case 1, we're passing item 1. If the user puts 2, we're calling item 2. If 3, item 3. Then we call the calculate and print item. Calculate and print with item as an argument, and this function right here, it creates a scanner object again, has a quantity, create a variable for the quantity, prompts the user to enter the quantity of the name of the item or the description of the item. Then we're creating a sales receipt object, passing the item and the quantity, and then we are calling the write receipt method on the sales receipt class, and that's all for that program. And I'm gonna run it to show you how it works. So first, this displays the menu of all the objects I created. So I want to buy designer jeans. Say 2. Then how much designer jeans? I want to buy 5 designer jeans. And then it wrote a file. Let me open that file to show you that it was formatted. Go into sales receipt. Now it's a file right here. There we have it. I purchased the quantity was 5, and I chose item 2, which was a jeans. So the unit price for the jeans was, where is it? $34.95, and you can see it right here in the file. So the subtotal was $174, $175, and sales tax was $10.48, and the total was $185.24.